Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Okay, we're going to get right into this today. We're talking about relationships, specifically your marriage and what happens after the honeymoon stage is gone and now you have your true relationship. And then sometimes things crop up. Could be soon, could be 10, 20 years later. You realize you have some issues and you might be thinking, and it's great, it's a great thought, counseling, therapy, but that's only going to go so far. And there's something that can be very impactful in helping you. It's called RTT. What the heck is that? It could save your marriage. And we're going to talk about that. She is an amazing RTT practitioner, also a life coach, and she's fantastic. Raquel Williams is with us on the program. Welcome, Raquel. How you doing?
Hi, Steve. I'm well. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. I am a believer in RTT, learned about it about a year ago when I was learning about hypnotherapy and lots of other modalities. Why don't you, I have so many questions, but why don't we go right to the basics right now? What is RTT?
Rapid transformational hypnotherapy actually is a combination of 4 different types of therapies. So psychotherapy, CBT, NLP, and hypnotherapy. And I really love that because it encompasses 4 different modalities in one, so that we're really able to dive deep into the subconscious mind, not only see what the root cause of an issue is, but bring you full circle as an individual. So you're not left hanging with an old feeling or old belief or anything, but really bring you full circle to let your mind know who you are today, so you're coherent with your conscious beliefs.
Would you say that and hypnotherapy is great? It can be so beneficial for many different things. Would you say that RTT is like hypnotherapy, almost on steroids in a way?
Yes,
okay.
I would. Because I myself have had hypnotherapy many years ago, and it wasn't at all what I do today. So yes.
Yeah. And the NLP thing is, it's making the shift, neuro-linguistics programming. It's making the shift in terms of how you communicate to yourself as well, which is so important, because if you're feeding yourself this negative vibe, you don't even know you're doing it sometimes. And you're derailing your relationship and your marriage, and you don't even know you're doing it.
Well, that's the whole point. And you just said something very key. Is if you understand that 95% of how you behave, the choices you make, how you think, how you feel, 95% is subconscious programming. So we're really only operating off of our conscious mind, like our conversation right now, goals, dreams we put down, things we're focused on in that moment, 5% of the time. That's huge. Like when you really understand that and sit with that for a minute, that means that most of who you are being is a program.
Basically, we're on autopilot.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because I feel like I'm with you. I'm listening. I'm an engaged person. You know, we're here. But the rest of it is being programmed, or the program is running in the background. And a lot of that program comes from when we were kids, right?
Yes. Yes, 0 to 7 is really those programming years. And so as a child, I'm going to say it's not so much what happens, although that in itself can be very impactful, but it's how the child perceives it. So what is the belief that the child took away from that experience?
Sure. A kid could be walking by the kitchen, overhear a conversation, mom and dad, mom and a relative, whatever, and hear one little thing, right? And internalize it and think it was for them, and then carry it with them their entire life. Kind of scary to think that it all begins there. And when somebody says, you know, I'm my father. Yeah, you are. I'm my mother. Yeah, you probably are.
Yeah. And the funniest thing, Steve, is when you say, when you make a conscious decision, I am not going to be my parents. I'm not going to be my mother. I'm not going to be my father. And then in that heated moment with your own child, you're like, holy cow, that was totally my mother. You can't stop it.
Well, going back to the NLP thing, which is the language thing, let me see if I have this right. So It doesn't hear, your subconscious doesn't hear the negative. So if you say to yourself, I'm not going to be my father, it's hearing, be your father, be your father, be your father, your subconscious. That's how its programming runs. So invariably, you are going to be that person.
Well, and because when you're saying I'm not going to be my father, just because you're saying it really doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's a feeling that is embedded in you, right? So I could consciously say I'm going to do many things, or I'm not going to do many things. That doesn't matter, because if subconsciously I have a different belief, that's what's going to trump whatever I'm saying consciously. A program that's running and running and running and running that I'm not even aware of.
And I do want to say that we're not bashing our parents. It's not about that.
No.
They did a great job, or did the best they could with what they had. And what do they have? Their parents.
Right.
So it's a
They're just
generational thing.
repeating. Yeah, it is generational. And I like to say that I want to work with people to undo those generational beliefs and patterns and programs that are affecting their current reality, because you cannot get away from it. It's, we are where we come from. You're a product of your environment, and there's no escaping that.
So back to the marriage thing. Now you have two people coming from two different environments. Their parents had two different beliefs. They've gotten together. It seemed to work maybe in the beginning, and then things crop up because they weren't aware of what's in the background, the programming of these two people. And then you have challenges, right?
Yes. Yes. The thing is this: honeymoon phase, everyone's on their best behavior. Okay. So you are making that conscious effort to just be above and beyond everything, because you're in love and you got all those hormones and endorphins going, and it's great. But when the honeymoon stage ends, and I've talked to enough couples now and married myself, I get that phase ends. Who you really are just starts to present itself. And so you can't, I like to tell people there is not enough willpower in the world for you to mask or overcome what's really going on.
And
it's
that's assuming,
impossible.
Raquel, that's assuming you know what it is.
Right. Right. But even when you talk to couples, and there's always a bully and a victim. Okay. Within a relationship, there's always someone playing one of those roles. And typically the wife's the victim and the husband's the bully. Sometimes it's the other way, but typically it's that way. And the interesting thing is that the energy happening between them is the same. So you would think, oh, the bully is a worse type of energy. No, it's the same energy that the two have, but they're just manifesting it in different roles. And so honeymoon phase ends, and now they start to do this dance, what I like to call a dance. And the dance is to the music that's been running in their program that they're not aware is running, but it's every time they poke at each other, every time there's a feeling, there's a belief that they are used to having. And so when I hook up with someone who's energetically at that same, and I don't want to get too woo-woo, but just so people understand it, kind of at that same wavelength, then eventually what happens is he's going to poke me and I'm going to poke him. And this is this dance to elicit that feeling or pattern or belief that I'm used to. So if I grew up not feeling that I'm enough, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy. And now I'm in a marriage where I've got this guy who said that he loved me, who I fell in love with. He was like the man of my dreams. But now we're getting into these arguments and something's changing in the relationship. And those fights are leaving me feeling like I'm not enough, like I'm not worth loving. And it's that same feeling that I begin to experience in the marriage. And maybe for him, it was the same thing, just being disrespected and not feeling like he was good enough. And so now we're doing this dance with each other where we're eliciting that same feeling that each of us grew up with.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting.
Oh yeah, and it can run layers deeper. Let's just say her parents split up when she was really young, right? Father left, whoop, out. Never
Mhm.
figured out why, just gone. And
Right.
didn't have that validation of a male growing up. So
Mhm.
now you're married, honeymoon phase is over, and now she's looking for more validation. And maybe she's not getting it. He, husband, always did, show his appreciation, maybe not verbally, but many other different ways, but then, didn't do it to her satisfaction. So then she
Right.
starts looking for it elsewhere. And that's
Right.
where you have infidelity kicking in. And,
So many
yes,
layers,
there
Steve, that we
are.
can go, so many directions. Even if I give you this example to really help explain this as well, because if you have a child, so let's say you're in the park with your child, and that child falls, 2, 3 years old, they fall down, they hurt themselves. And as a mother, I say, "Oh, are you okay?" The moment I express that, what does that child do? They start crying. I hurt my leg. They're like,
Mhm.
can't breathe. And they write, I'm
Classic,
hugging them. And they're right.
classic, right.
And so they process what just happened and they release it. That's their form of process and release, right? But let's say that that same child falls and I simply say, okay, get up, you're fine, shake it off. Let's go. Come on, you're good, you're good, you're good, right? And I get this child used to sucking it up, not feeling, not connecting with their emotions, because that's essentially what I'm doing, right? And so now this person grows up very disconnected from their feelings, very
Mm,
not in tune with how they feel, but it doesn't mean that that emotion isn't there. So when you have an incident with your partner and something happens that elicits an emotion, people call them triggers, they could be for all kinds of different reasons, your nervous system responds. And so now you're in this dance together because you can't, just what I said earlier, there's no amount of willpower to stop that nervous system reaction. It's a stress response. You're not even attached to it. You don't even know, you don't know how to express it, how to even acknowledge it. You just get irritated or mad and you become, whatever it is you become in that moment to that other person. So those are things that we don't understand. So if you don't even understand, like you said, how you're feeling or why you're feeling it within a relationship, that's when it just starts to spiral
yeah.
because the two of you don't understand each other anymore. It's like you're living with a stranger.
Essentially you are, because the real person came out. Their true emotions
Yes.
that you never realize it. We should all have therapy before we get married. All of this, get it out of the way. What a wonderful place this would be. And I experienced, when I was growing up, my mom was very overprotective. And I found myself doing that to my kids until one day I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like, falling and all of that. They were a little bit older, call it like 9 or around there. And then I started realizing it. And then 10, 11, I'm like, stop. So I reset and realized, but I wish I
Yes.
realized that in the beginning. And the same thing that we're all talking about is parenting our kids. If you realize that in the beginning, your kids might be a little bit different. But again, we're working with what we had, and all the stuff we're talking about, we're unaware of until you learn. You don't know until you know.
You're absolutely right. And we do the best that we can. And this is not to bash parents or our own parents. It's
Sure.
just a reality. And the truth is there's so many families and couples that are disconnected from each other with just these underlying feelings that they have towards one another. And the only real way to resolve it is to understand, why are you feeling it? And whether it's an individual, a couple, or even a family, really getting to the heart of what is this going on? What's the real program and emotion attached to it that's causing this fire between or within this family or with this couple?
So take us, Raquel, through the process. You made a couple virtually. Sure, you can do it anywhere.
Yep.
Do you do it individually, or is it always as a couple? And then what's the starting point?
Yeah, great question. So let me just touch on traditional therapy. Traditional marriage counseling, I think, is really good for one reason, is that it gives each person kind of a safe place to be able to go and vent and tell their side and share how they feel.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, by the time a couple gets to the point that they decide they need help, they're not communicating and they can't even finish a sentence together. So they generally will table it and say, okay, we just need to go get some help. So traditional therapy does that. It allows them a platform with like a mediator, if you would, that's going to keep the other one quiet and let the other person express themselves and say what's going on. And for that, it's great. But the challenge that I began to see, because I've been counseling couples for 13 years now, and the challenge is that you might recognize what you're doing because someone is telling you, right? So if your wife is saying you're just being very mean and you're like, you get set off 0 to 100 so fast and you have no patience with the kids, and they start sharing it with you, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I do that, right? So there's an awareness now.
No, it's your fault. It's your fault. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. And most of the time, that's what's going to happen. There's
Sure.
very little ability to be able to accept that it's you or take responsibility.
To own it. Yeah.
And so when I work with people, number one is I sit them down, the couples, and I let them know I'm going to expect each of you to take 100% responsibility. So there's none of this, it's him, it's her. So I tell them that up front. And then I work with them individually for 12 weeks before we even touch the marriage. And here's really where I think I'm different. And the reason I do this is because I started to see in my own marriage and in counseling others that, again, going back to what I said earlier, there was no amount of willpower that someone could put forth to make any real changes. So just because you're talking about it, bringing stuff to the forefront and so forth, neither of them were able to really change the behavior. That's where it was like, well, what's wrong here? You know, they love each other. They obviously love each other. They want to keep their family together, but they're just not able to change the behavior. And so when I learned about hypnotherapy and RTT and the effect that it had on my life, and we can do that story another day, but it changed my life so drastically that I started to really dive in and understand the power of the mind and the subconscious programming and how it does really rule us. And so when I work with individuals separately for 12 weeks before I even bring them into marriage counseling, I'm able to help them do a deep dive into their own programming and understand their own wounds, why they're feeling what they're feeling, really become the observer in their own life. Because the moment you become the observer, the program's no longer running you. So now you can almost step back and like you're outside of your body almost and say, oh, wow, I did that. You know, you start to observe your behavior, your thoughts and your feelings, as opposed to just joining them and being them. Does that make sense?
100%. Even what I talked about before about the being overprotective. I would say, but looking at it from afar is like, look what you're doing. Look what, and that's just one small aspect.
Yes.
When you work with somebody individually for those 12 weeks, do they connect the dots to the things from their past that are running the program? Like, does somebody say, oh, yeah, when I was 6, yeah, my mom or my dad did that. Oh, never even thought of that. Do you get those aha moments?
Yes, because in our sessions, our actual RTT hypnotherapy sessions, you gain great clarity. Your subconscious shows us exactly what we're going for. So yes, the answer is yes. You begin to see where this behavior came from, the emotion or feeling behind it, because everything is triggered by a feeling. So you get to now start to notice, I tell people your life starts to make sense. You start to make sense to yourself. That's why I do that. That's why I feel that way. That's why I get mad so fast. That's what, like, all these lights start going off. And when you can recognize something, Steve, you can start to change it.
Yeah. And the 12-week thing, it's not like a marketing ploy. It takes 12 weeks. It takes time to change habits. You don't, have a New Year's resolution and, a week and a half in, oh yeah, I'm working out every day and I just lost 5 pounds. No, it takes time. And that's why many, it does. It is what it is. And you have a whole life before you or in back of you that got you to this point.
Yes. And I tell that to people. I have a couple I'm working with, and the guy's very active in the gym and is always in the gym. And I had to say to him, look, you didn't go to the gym 3 times and you had abs and these great legs and arms. I mean, that's not how it works. It's a process. The mind is the same way. And when you're undoing patterns and you're undoing behaviors, the hypnotherapy is an excellent tool to get to things quickly and to help the brain know the truth so that we can bring that subconscious thinking up to who you are consciously. So that's what's great about the RTT. And then as we go through, I teach them tools and other things that help to begin to integrate this new belief about who they are into their behavior with their spouse or their children or coworkers or whatever. And then we start to really play it out in real time.
Tell us about the NLP part. And we'll go deeper in the future in a lot of these different components here, but the language that you use, are you giving us tools in terms of NLP, what we should be saying to ourselves, how we should be addressing ourselves? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a big part of it. Understanding that so much of our own behavior, people start to realize how much they beat themselves up, how much they criticize themselves. Body shaming is huge. I've worked with so many women that just body shame, and not even realizing that they're doing it. So what you say to yourself is huge. But you can't, I'm going to say this. I have not been able to, and I haven't seen anyone who could control their thoughts without getting to that stuck emotion as well. Because the body begins to hold on to these emotions. So it's the mind, it's the heart, it's the body that start to play this song, and they're all connected. So
you're saying that you can only get so far when you get to that emotion, that you need to have more, call it therapy, in what you offer to get over that point.
Yeah, it's like I used to hear people just say, just think positive, affirmations every day. And I tried that for years. And I came to the conclusion that it's like putting lipstick on a pig, because I cannot affirmation myself to death and think that something's going to change when I have a belief system and an emotion attached to it that's not being addressed. You can't just affirmation yourself and think positive. You got to go in and get what's happening and release it so that you'll even believe what you're saying. You ever say an affirmation and feel heaviness, like you don't really believe that?
Yeah, I know. I totally get what you're saying. You're talking to somebody who says every other day, I'm going to keep a gratitude journal, who received 4 of them over the holidays randomly. Didn't even ask for them. I'm on the board of the Girl Scouts. They send me one. Okay, great.
I love it.
It just showed up. I think it's the universe's way of saying, dude, you really should be doing that. Is it going to work? Do I believe it? I think so. You know what? I feel that it's going to increase positivity, which in terms of, anybody's healing, I think is step 1. You got to have, you got to lift yourself up the vibes a little bit before you can go in and, clean out the gunk and the garbage and all of that. We're out of time.
Oh, wow.
Soon done by. Yeah, because I want to save some time for you telling everybody your website and how it works. Free consult. How do you do it?
Yes, it is a free consultation. Website is Raquel, RAQUEL, rwilliams.com. My phone number is 415-347-6861. And you just go on and click schedule a call, and we can chat and see how hypnotherapy can help you and which program would be best for you.
And I love the fact that you do it individually, because not a lot of people are going to say, oh yeah, I'll do couples therapy. It's great. Hey, been there before, especially if it's a big situation. Not the most comfortable place to be, but I'll say this, and goes back to what we started talking about. The reason you're at the point in that relationship is you had garbage from each partner's relationship from back in the day. So you can hack it out all you want there, and you can be the mediator and the referee and all of that. It's only going to get you so far. Been there, done that, and the problems are going to crop back unless you fix the past. What's going on? Fix the programming. Fix the programming.
Yeah. That's completely it. I would love to continue this next week with you, because there's so much more to be said here.
Oh my gosh, we could do like an hour on NLP alone. Just even the phraseology and things that you should be saying to yourself. And it's not even about beating yourself up. It's just programming your mind in a more positive direction. Great talking with you. Learned a lot.
Thank you, Steve.
Look forward next time we get a chance to get together, Raquel.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.